She's going to be talking about being Black online in regards to activism.
So, Susan.
Hi, am I there? Can people hear me?
We can hear you, and we've got
right,
you on the screen. Lovely. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Erin and Bill and John, for all the kind of organisational activities that are going on behind the scenes. Much appreciated. I just was really struck by, you know, talking about platforms that are created, that people can join into, just creating a more equal conversation, really, in this kind of hierarchy that we've got. And also that kind of, thank you, Claire, and thank you, John, for that conversation. It was really interesting. And that kind of call to action and call to change from Dwight Turner. So I just want to say that some of what I'm going to talk about today, I think it's quite upsetting, it's quite emotional. So you probably need to look after yourselves in this and what I'm going to talk about. So almost all brown and black people of my generation have a story of racial violence to tell. And as David Olusoga writes, that oral history of 20th century racial violence has never been collected or collated, but it's there and it is shocking. But now our history is kind of being written out in different ways, and one of those platforms is on Twitter, and everybody can witness that. And it's no longer reliant on partial histories and partial truths that are written by others. And, you know, I wandered onto Twitter a couple of years back, never expecting the tweets I received last Saturday morning, but always expecting the tweet I received a few months back when the N-word was directed at me. And many of you will have seen that. Some of you would have followed what's happened to me and to others on Twitter over the last few months. And for those who haven't, they'll be posted in the chat. I would like to warn you that these tweets are upsetting, and if anyone should feel triggered, please take time out, talk to somebody who will listen and support you and who is able to understand your particular and unique response. And I'm just leaving it up to people out there doing the tech to put those in the chat. I was shocked by these recent experiences of online racism, but I was shocked in different ways, and I was shocked for different reasons. And I hope I'll be able to convey some of this to you. If we want to reveal the nature and experience of racism, then we need to dig much deeper and reach out much further to understand its impact and resist the impulse to scroll on by and do nothing. Anti-racism activism means so much more than easy outrage. It demands we take action, and it requires us to stand up and be counted for in the face of liberal structures posturizing innocence. And yet inside those very structures lurk the pillars of establishment that prop up ideas, are often in denial and resistant to change, and neurotically attached to the values and beliefs they refuse to see. So I'm just going to slightly move around what I've got on my screen here, hope you don't mind. So I've been on the receiving end of two very different forms of online abuse. One delivered with a kind of covert, swaggering confidence, difficult to hold to account and difficult to spot. And in the words of Edo Lodge, and I quote, words that slip out of your hands easily like a water snake toy. The other tweet was an overt form of the use of the N-word. A more than likely extremist, reactionary, racist attack, glaringly obvious and glaringly racist. An attack leveled at me where multiple accounts were coordinated to spell out different and offensive words in response to a mild-mannered tweet. I think people's responses to both these tweets mirror my own to some extent. I'm going to, you know, kind of use that a lot in my talk today. I'm going to talk about this kind of mirroring activity between the person in this case it's me, and the people who are on Twitter. So some of my responses to the N-word tweet were, so I'm actually kind of using quite a lot of the language that was used on Twitter over the last few months to support me. So the responses to the N-word tweet were, "This is appalling. Action must be taken against this. This is utterly horrible. These are a violation. These accounts have been suspended. Disappointing, disgusting, vile and sickening. Foul abuse. Twitter can be a cesspool. This is an offence in exactly the same way as if someone were to call you the N-word whilst you were walking down the street." Some of the response to Emmy van Derzen, and that's the only time I'm going to use her name, and we've taken out the use of her name in the tweets. It's all public. This conversation took place publicly. Those tweets are still online, but I'm not seeking to build up any kind of conversation against Emmy van Derzen. So I'm going to refer to her as EVD. So some of the responses to the EVD tweets, which occurred last Saturday morning, from people who are in this room, from people I am extremely grateful to, were, so not flipping the script and repositioning herself publicly as the victim of being blocked. I was saddened to see her responses. She's publicly made racist microaggressions. It would have been better to apologise. The whole exchange demonstrates how deeply entrenched in Western centrism and white privilege our profession is. The silence from that profession is deafening. I think I already noticed that, by the way. Not from the individual people, but from the profession. The gall of the woman to position herself as victim here. A more active response. I'm just trying to think, is something going on the Twitter there? Can people not see the images?
Some people can't download the file, so I'm just converting them.
Okay, thank you, Erin. Thanks ever so much. Honestly, these sticky moments on Zoom, I think Erin will definitely be able to sort it out, and John. So a more active response is for us all to stop idealising senior figures in our profession. Because their status doesn't mean that they've done the work on racism and equality. These are all quotes, by the way. There's room for what Susan is saying. Trying to shut her down and being condescending doesn't change this. That wasn't an invitation to dialogue. That was a condescending, sarcastic swipe. The silence from EVD following this tweet is not okay. So I'm wondering, Anne, how are we getting on with the stuff in the chat? Is that coming through? Erin?
I've just zipped them and sent them, but I think it's to do with the image files. So people can try that, and then Erin is also converting them to another image format in the background. Brilliant. Thank you, Bill. I mean, you know, if they don't come through, I will kind of explain them at the end of this. So actually, we can't see the difference in, well, we have seen some of the difference in the responses, but we can't see the tweets. So the responses to the first tweet was kind of far more visceral. No one had to really think about it. I didn't have to think about it. And of course I was upset, but I knew exactly what to do. I reported it directly to the police on the day that it happened. I made the decision not to go back and look at the tweet for about a week. Something's upset me like that. I don't keep going back and revisiting it. I've learned over many, many years not to do that. But many people, and some of you are here today, reported this abuse on my behalf. And because of so much support, I thought I wouldn't need to report it. Actually, eventually I did actually have to personally report it, because that's the way Twitter works. But it was incredible, the amount of people that reported that tweet. And in a sense, the N-word tweet was very straightforward to me. It's not the first time I've been called the N-word, and it won't be the last time I'm called the N-word.
It shocked me, it upset me. My weekend was taken up with dealing with its consequences, as my weekend was taken up last weekend dealing up with the consequences. But the tweets from EVD not only shocked me, they mystified me. It was like 8:30 in the morning. I had to look twice. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that she was continuing the conversation with me. I couldn't believe it was actually her. So I had to check and I had to verify the account because I couldn't believe that she was trying to have this conversation with me. And it was the casual condescension from someone I've admired, from someone I've actually quoted in my book, really hurt and surprised me. In fact, I was absolutely shaken by what David Olusoga calls the mutated product of the same racism that has stalked us for years. And I would add to the word mutated, muted. I felt bewildered, confused, and I felt betrayed by somebody that I've admired for the whole of my life. So experience is a tough teacher, charging a high price for the lessons it delivers to people of colour online. So whilst I acted against the first tweet, I decided not to respond to EVD because I knew that it wouldn't be a debate that would benefit me. Now, I've experienced similar conversations many, many times in my life. And my intuition would be that the debate would be one of resistance, denial, and self-righteousness. And no, why would I want that conversation in my life?
Susan?
Yeah.
I have popped them on my Twitter on a lockdown tweet and it's linked in the chat now.
Brilliant. So people can...
Anyone who wants it, you don't have to be a member on Twitter. You can click it and have a look there. And I'll delete it after the talk.
Thank you ever so much, Bill. Sorry to everybody that went wrong. Thank you for Bill for sorting it out. So be aware they are upsetting. And I relinquished that responsibility to everybody else on Twitter. And many people took up that responsibility and held that conversation with me. So one of the things that you'll discover on Twitter is that this conversation started with EVD on Saturday morning and there were 3 tweets. And I then blocked her. I mean, never in a million years did I ever think that I would block this person. Never in a million years did I think this conversation was going to happen. You know, and I think that people carried that burden for me. And I refused to carry that burden of what I would describe as disinhibition and unprocessed and regurgitated words from someone in a very powerful position within the counselling establishment. You know, there are many times when I'm thrown off balance in a public space, where my safety feels threatened. And this was yet another one of those occasions. And I don't believe she was trying to have an authentic, honest discussion. I felt undermined and I felt spoken over like an adult to a child. I felt deeply patronised. So, you know, I'm imagining that people are having a look at those tweets now, and I know it's not really a great way to start Saturday morning, is it? But both those incidents triggered past experience, as they will do for you. And some of them, you know, embodied experiences that never have been vocalized. So, you know, what really helps is watching people move from a passive to an active approach to anti-racism. And this means a lot to me. It was like Twitter is walking alongside me, and I think that's a quote from Rogers, giving voice to my confusion and filling me with ideas on how to respond internally. So, you know, it's Saturday morning. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to say. I'm trained in online supervisions. I'm not somebody who is disinhibited on Twitter. There's nothing I put on Twitter that I haven't thought extremely carefully about. But I wasn't left alone to deal with this on my own. Process these thoughts on my own and process that confusion and my upset on my own. And you can hear me, as you hear me talk, you can hear that I'm, you know, triggered by that experience last Saturday morning. It's Saturday morning today. And, you know, I'm okay. I'm being upset in this conversation. That's just me being real. And that's just me talking about a really difficult subject. And also, it's really difficult for me to be supported. You know, when you're supported by so many people, you know, that actually upsets me because of the times in my life where I haven't been supported. And I think that would resonate for a lot of people. So the Twitter community rallied around me. It was like a comfort blanket, surrounding me with words of support. And I can't tell you how much I valued that support. And yet Twitter remains a cruel circus, some of which is filled with hate. Activism on Twitter is only sustainable when everyone is prepared to act against racism. Easy outrage, a term I've used before, a term that comes from Bina Candola, is, well, easy. But Twitter has become both a source of support as well as a source of abuse. I'm just going to ask John, am I running out of time? How am I doing for time, John?
Oh, you're doing, I think we've got another 15 minutes, Susan.
15 minutes, okay, thank you. I don't want to run over time. And I want to be able to take some questions and comments. So today I really wanted to give you an insight into two extremely different forms of online abuse and two very different sets of responses that in some ways mirror my own. And, you know, they're responses from people here today. And finally, I would like to let you know that I've not seen my children or my granddaughter or any member of my family for over a year until extremely recently. So I hadn't seen any members of my family, say, for about 13 months, I think, 13 or 14 months. No one has been in my home for over that length of time. And yet, because of that first tweet, the N-word tweet, I had to let a policewoman and a policeman into my home for a considerable amount of time in order to report the hate crime. And that made me really, really angry and really upset, because I'm trying, like everybody else here, I'm trying to keep myself safe in the pandemic. And yeah, I have to let two people into my home. I have to open all the windows. I have to mask myself up. And not only am I trying to protect myself, I'm giving evidence against a hate crime. So the consequences of the behavior, whilst, you know, it seems obvious around the N-word and the fact that I have to let the police into my house, the consequences of the tweet that occurred last weekend were actually, for me, they were more upsetting. They took over my whole weekend. You know, I'm happy to respond to people who tweet to me, and I always try and respond to everybody who tweets support to me. But that took up my whole weekend. And I work full time and I work around race. So you know, somebody is just not considering the lived experience in any way. And they're not considering it at all. And some of you might have seen, I posted this A4 sheet around lived experience and covert experiences and overt experiences of racism. And I did that because I didn't know what else to do. I had so much energy and I had so much hurt and anger, and I just needed to express it. And once I'd done that kind of, I don't know what you call it, with that thing I did on Twitter, I just felt so much better because I'd taken some power back, and the power came back to me. But anyway, as an update around the police and the investigation, there's nothing they could do. I know those people were taken off Twitter, but the police couldn't do anything. But I do wonder, if I was a famous footballer, if resources would have been found to hold those people more to account. Will I stay on Twitter as a brown person? I don't know. But it's only with your help and support that I've stayed on Twitter this long. So clearly we need to continue to act to challenge the counselling and psychotherapy establishment. And I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time out to listen to me. And I'm happy to take any questions and any comments and anything you might want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much for really bringing all of yourself to that very powerful presentation. Thank you, and discussion. So we've got till, I'm just checking the time, we've got till 5 past, so just a little over 10 minutes. I've got Maya in the chat room for any questions or reflections, and we've got some time if anybody wants to use the raise hand function in Zoom. We can also invite you to unmute your microphone, and you might want to yeah, make a comment using your voice or ask a question using your voice. Yeah.
There's a question there from Talika about 5 or 6 messages up, John.
Oh, yes. Yes, I got it there. Thank you. Thanks for that, Bill. Is expecting anti-racism from institutions futile? Question mark. I had a similar experience last year with COVID, have got back to Twitter anonymously now. So thank you, Talika. Thank you.
Sorry, people always say that's a really good question. But it is, that's what people keep saying that's a really good question. Is it futile? I think sometimes it feels futile, doesn't it? And then at other times it doesn't feel futile. And I think this is around, you know, the moment to moment experiencing of your life and your lived experience. So sometimes I feel like giving up, Talika, and sometimes I feel like carrying on. And today I feel like carrying on because I know that I'm in a place of safety. I know that I'm in a place where people are going to listen to me and that I'm going to be heard. So it's where that anti-racism is taking place across this country, in all institutions. And, you know, I happen to work for Cardiff University and I know it's taking place there. But is it making a huge difference to my life personally? I would say not really, no. So I think it's a painful journey. There's a lot of people putting some, sorry to come back to you, Talika, I'm not sure if I've answered your question there. I hope I tried. I don't think there is really an easy answer to that question. But what I'm noticing in the Twitter is a lot of people experience quite a lot of emotional responses to what I've delivered today. And that's really important. You know, it's important to hear those emotional responses. It's upsetting, but that's what we're supposed to do, isn't it, as therapists? You know, and we're not, you know, we're not supposed to be sitting there in a room challenging people of colour, black and brown people, on their lived experiences. And particularly when I personally believe that if you're a therapist, you are always in a position of power. There's just no way you're not. Anyway, I'm rambling on now, and somebody, Lydia, I think, has got a hand up, and I don't know, John, I'm leaving it up to you.
Yes, yeah, well, I just really want to, I think what you're saying is so powerful, Susan. I also didn't want to interrupt, and I really appreciate you saying different days bring different feelings about, like, not sure if I can go on, and I'm so glad we're together today and you have that feeling that you can. And so, yeah. Lydia, let's see if we can unmute your microphone. We're just, there we go. You should have the invitation to unmute there. Are you seeing that on your, oh good, we should be able to hear you now, Lydia.
Yeah, hi. Firstly, Susan, I just want to send support and solidarity to you. We were there sort of on Saturday, and you can hear in my voice how sad, as a brown therapist myself, I'm a trainee, and my colleague Namali sent a message, and we were really angry. Like, this is the effect for us as a community, as people of colour. You know, we were angry and hurt and disgusted by it, and we wanted obviously to protect you. And my feeling was, I don't want to keep this dialogue going. I don't want to give her any more attention than she should. And I'm sitting with, you know, you talked about like footballers, and that in itself is really hard, like what is happening to them, the abuse they receive in the stadiums, then the abuse they receive online. But yet they can wear a national or local badge on their shirt. And it's about complicity, you know, when white people see this and do nothing. You know, I was very enamored by the white people who did come out and support you. Yeah, that means a lot, because we need allyship. Allyship isn't just sitting back and doing nothing. Allyship is speaking up and speaking out, because I didn't want you to have your whole weekend ruined. I didn't want you to have that. And I know that that happened, you know. I wanted you to just move on, but you can't, because it sticks with us. And the N word from those random, you know, anonymous, racist, whatever, like sometimes that's easier to deal with, you know, that's the overt, we catch that, we push that away. But that insidious, that white fragility, that fear, that privilege from someone that you respected, you know, is just heartbreaking and devastating. And I just want to speak out, obviously in support to you, but also to command and appeal to white people to do the work. If you don't know what you should say, then start finding out what you should say and what you should do, because not doing anything is what we live in. That's what we live in. We live in that fear, we live in that shadow, and we need support. You know, to me, it's an unethical thing to just leave that. So yeah, I just send you love and support, Susan. And, you know, you keep doing what you're doing. I know it's not easy, because you have obviously received, you know, you're putting noses out of joint. You're tapping into stuff that people don't want to see, and you're showing them up for what they are. And, you know, their reaction only demonstrates what is underneath the surface. So in my mind, you've popped a big pimple.
Thank you ever so much, Lydia. And I respect what you've just said there, and you're kind of summing up of that whole experience. And I totally, you know, I really respect the fact that you're able to reach out to me like that, and to know that that weekend was ruined, and to make you know, to call people out, to call people, you're calling people to take a stand. And, you know, the tweets that people wrote to me and said, but I didn't have words, I was too upset, I lost my words. And what happened was that people like Lydia and people who tweeted me gave me the words. You know, when you get so upset and you're being abused online, your emotions, you know this, we're counsellors, your emotions are flooded. And as Lydia's talking, it's probably bringing back to her experience of being on the counselling training courses, where the only person of colour, black, brown person in the room, so it triggers off and all sorts of things. And, you know, Lydia's really, what she's saying is that it's really important for white people to challenge these systems, these structures that exist, that uphold the establishment of counselling and psychotherapy. And I wouldn't feel safe saying these things at a BACP conference. I'm not having a diss at the BACP. I've actually delivered lots of things at BACP conferences, but I wouldn't feel that safe delivering this. And that's because this person is of an extremely high standing in part of the establishment. So I just want to thank you, Lydia. And I want to thank you for, I think it's because sometimes when people of colour, brown people, black people are expressing emotion, none of us know really what's behind that emotion. And it may feel like we need to offer you support for expressing that emotion, or you think that I'm upset. Don't make the mistake of thinking that Lydia is upset, or that I'm upset, because I am practically in tears. But it's not that, it's something else, something much deeper than just being upset. It's carrying a load and a weight and a burden that I've carried for many, many years. So it's bigger than that. It's bigger than upset. And yet, you know, and I do totally appreciate the support from white people that I've had, but it was noticeable. I do notice who doesn't support me. I notice who exactly is out there who doesn't come forward and support me. And I'm not just talking about me, or anybody of colour in the counselling and psychotherapy, psychology world, who doesn't get supported by these institutions. And what is going on? You know, really, what is happening there? Anyway, so I've rambled on again now, so sorry, John. Any other
Don't
questions?
apologise, Susan. There's no need for apologies at all. And thank you, Lydia, too. Thank you for that. There was a comment earlier that Becky was reminding me of from Ella, asking, well, how do we know who's got our back? How do we show that we've got each other? What delivers this most effectively?
Well, I think there's only one question I can answer there, and that is, how do we know who's got our back? That is absolutely brilliant, because we don't know. And I find that incredibly difficult wherever I've worked, that I don't really know who's got my back. And that's just the human condition. I think, John, you talked about that earlier. And, you know, I keep putting myself back into Susan. You've got to get back to trusting people. You cannot do this alone. You have to hold on to trust. You have to reach out to the people and intuitively understand who you can trust and who you can't trust. Now, I think racism in human beings is embodied, and I can feel racism from white people. They don't even have to say anything. Even when I'm walking along the street and don't know anybody, and somebody comes towards me, they may not say anything, but it's embodied in everything they do. They may not even look at me, but I can feel it. It's like a bristling embodied thing. So I kind of feel like, you know, when people are arguing against me, or, you know, they're being really reasonable, I can feel it. And it's, you know, and it can come out of the skin of a person of colour as well, that they're not supporting you. And I can see Talika nodding, and really appreciate that nodding. Thank you, Talika. And you just have that felt sense. So there were two other parts of that question that I can't remember, but it feels like a good place. And I've got one more minute to kind of bring this to an end. And John, I don't know if you want to do a bit of summing up, or was it?
I noticed Talika's got their hand up.
Another question?
We come back to you in the panel, because I'm mindful of the time.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's really generous, Talika. And I think there's something really important what you're saying. Maybe we'll need to come back to this later. There's something about, like you saying, Susan, of being, it's not just about being emotional. There's something else. There is being hurt, and there's something else. And yeah, maybe that's something we come back to when we've got more time later. But that feels profoundly important, that we're not just responding to like the emotional impact for you last weekend, but what's just so that, and what's so much bigger than that. Yeah.
Thank you, John, and thank you for everybody, and thank you for the comments and your support in the chat. And yeah, well, I'll see you later at the plenary. No, I'm staying in the conference. It's too fascinating to leave. Thank you, John.